The Michigan Theater in Detroit was built in 1925 in the French Renaissance style. It had an unrivaled elegance that cost $13.5 million. In today's money, $42.4 million. It was originally to be called the Chicago Theater, but was changed to reflect the pride Detroit had in the 1920s. In order to build the theater, several businesses had to be destroyed in the spot which it was built. This included hotels, restaurants, blacksmiths, and an employment bureau. The theater was built on Bakley Road, which the Detroit Free Press called a wide, unkempt thoroughfare with nondescript buildings lining most of its length. However, after the theater was built, the neighborhood became much more lively and full of businesses trying to gain on the popularity of the movies that were being shown. When the theater opened on August 23, 1926, people finally got to take a look at the extreme extravagance that went into building this place. Starting with the grand lobby, which was 1,000 square feet and featured mirror-banded walls, a black and white checkered floor, marbled columns, red velvet hangings, and several crystal chandeliers. One of its most prominent features was the large replica of a Roman sculpture featuring horse-drawn carriage in which kids would often try and climb into, where they then had to be removed from. In addition to the horse and carriage sculpture, there were several oil paintings that were hanging around the theater, as well as a piano in the lobby to help entertain the guests before the movie started. The stage itself featured an orchestra pit and had 6 aisles of seats on each level, side boxes, and 10-foot crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. One of the theater's largest attractions was the 2,500-pipe Wurlitzer organ, which would set the mood for various movies. The stage itself was so large it was described as being able to hold a circus. This size of the stage allowed actors multiple room to participate on the stage when it was being used as a performance venue. The Detroit Free Press described this as being beyond the dreams of loveliness, entering you pass into another world. However, this lavish praise would not last once the Depression hit. It was forced to join a group called the United Detroit Theaters. It would spend the next 25 years with the group until it was forced to split off due to the mismanagement of the United Detroit Theaters.
The Michigan Theater began to struggle in the 1950s due to television becoming so popular. The Michigan Theater, in response, used the techniques that were being used by all theaters at this time to combat it. In 1953, it became one of only 12 theaters in the country showing 3D movies, such as The House of Wax starring Vincent Price. In 1955, they were forced to sell their beloved organ, the Wurlitzer. It was sold to Fred Herms of Racine, Wisconsin, who installed it in his home. It remains there to this day. These measures only helped mildly. By 1960s, they were losing audiences rapidly. It soon became unprofitable. Eventually, United Detroit Theater sold the theater for $1.5 million, but new owners cared more about the building rather than playing movies. The building was set to be destroyed in 1967. However, a man named Nicholas George came to the rescue at just the right time. He reopened the theater in 1968 by buying the film Valley of the Dolls and playing it in the theater. He also made efforts to repair what he could. He continued to rent more films for audiences to see until 1971. George could not keep this up forever. He eventually conceded ownership of the theater. He was able to save artifacts by donating them to Wayne State University Music Department. Were it not for George's efforts, the building would have been completely destroyed. Sam Harris saw an opportunity that same year and bought a 16-year lens on the theater with the owners for $500,000 to turn the theater into a nightclub. Seats in the movie theater were ripped apart and were replaced by tables. The nightclub opened on March 27th and only lasted for a few months before going out of business. The room was then bought by Stephen Glantz, who turned it into a concert venue in 1973. The Michigan Palace name was kept. Many popular stars from the 1970s came, including Aerosmith, David Bowie, Bob Seger, and Bruce Springsteen. It was not well taken care of. Gum was left on the seats, mirrors were shattered because people punched them, railings were ripped out, and the floor contained much debris. The nightclub closed in 1976 following a dispute between the owners and Glantz, who had cost them a lot of money in internal damages. Parking became a severe problem to employees, so in 1977 the owners paid money to bulldoze the theater and create a 160-acre parking lot. Walls were knocked off and the grand staircase was bulldozed, yet most of the theater remained intact. The project was completed. The once significant and gorgeous theater has now been reduced to nothing more than a parking space.
For 37 years after, the Michigan Theater lived as nothing more than a parking garage. A beautiful parking garage, but the Detroit landmark really fell from grace. Occasionally, tourists were allowed to explore the lot, where they found a skeleton of the great Michigan Theater. Its curtains were ripped up, the hallways were decrepit, and mirrors were shattered. And yet, the parking lot retained much of the beauty of this old Detroit landmark. However, the Detroit-based Boydell Development Company and its CEO, Dennis Kefallinos, had a vision and bought the property in 2014. During an interview, Kefallinos claimed, "I bought it for one reason," he said, pointing to the sprawling but nearly empty Michigan Theater and its ornate ceilings. "This is why I bought the property. I want to restore it back to what it was," Kefallinos said. The commercial real estate company claimed they were going to turn the lot into an event space. Judging from the past 4 years, however, this vision was never realized. Only 3 events were shown during Kefallinos' ownership. These were a national skateboarding competition in 2014, a free showing of the film 8 Mile in 2015, and an expo to reveal the 2019 model of the Mercedes-Benz G-Class in January of this year. A very short and disappointing set of events for a so-called event space. This isn't much of a surprise because the owner, Dennis Kefallinos, has a very infamous reputation in Detroit. Most of Kefallinos' residential properties are tied up in lawsuits over living conditions, code violations, and failure to seek occupancy permits. In February of last year, the building's Safety Engineering and Environmental Department Director David Bell claimed they have erected walls using combustible materials, illegally installed plumbing and heating systems in numerous units without the proper permits, inspections, and approvals. So given the awful owner, it is a good thing that Kefallinos has been trying to sell the property since 2017. Nobody has purchased the property yet, but Detroiters want to see those false promises realized. They want to bring back the old glory of the Michigan Theater. They want to walk into the building and find another world, not a parking lot. But for now, the theater's future is uncertain. Detroit can only hope that the next owner of the property takes good care of her.